Welcome to Just Minding My Business Radio, where we are moving at the speed of God, learning what we didn't know we didn't know. I'm your host, Ida Crawford.
And I'm your co-host, Ruth Haskins.
So grab a pen and paper and get ready for information that you can use.
Welcome to Just Minding My Business. We are so glad that you're here with us today and to be a part of our listening audience. We hope you had a really good day, and we hope to add to it now. Today, coming to the mic, we have Martina Gollin-Graves, MSW, as President and CEO with Mental Health America of Wisconsin. Her work is driven by MHA's commitment to promote mental health as a critical part of overall wellness. This includes prevention services, early identification, and intervention for those at risk, as well as integrated care and treatment for those who need it, with recovery as the goal. She has led statewide initiatives for improving mental wellness for more than 10 years. Her advocacy efforts support suicide prevention, and she is the co-founder of the Prevent Suicide Greater Milwaukee Coalition. She has many other accolades to her name. She is a working professional in the mental health industry, and we really welcome her to our platform to bring to you some information that you may find very useful. So welcome, Martina.
Yes. Thank you. Nice to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. I know we caught you at work, so we're so grateful that you're giving us this time. I know you're busy.
Absolutely.
So I guess to begin with, we want to know, what is the state of mental health in America?
Well, we've spoken about this before, and I wish I could say it was better. I think in some regard, I feel like I'm hearing it being talked about in more platforms. So every day I feel like I'm hearing it in maybe non-traditional areas. So I think in that respect, things are better because we're talking about it more. But I think the state of people's wellness is up in the air. There's a lot going on.
Okay. Well, what is when you say a lot going on, can you clarify that a little bit? Because there is a lot going on, but a lot of us are totally unaware of what's happening.
Well, I think that suicide rates are escalating. I think we're hearing of more mental health issues that are taking place in school settings and workplace settings. I think our current administration is really taking a toll on people's mental health and wellness. And so I think in non-traditional venues, people are talking about mental health. And I this time I'd like to also add substance abuse disorders. People are talking about those things hand in hand.
So are the substance abuse issues their way of handling the mental health stress that they're experiencing? Is that what's going on?
I think that's certainly part of the equation. I mean, I think both of you have heard that we have an opioid crisis epidemic in our country. And so in my world and my belief is that we really can't talk about substance use disorders without talking about mental health. So to your point, I think that certainly people are utilizing substances as a coping strategy, but I also think that the epidemic is bigger than just coping strategies.
Okay, now that sounds interesting. What do you mean by that?
Yes, well, in Wisconsin, and I'm not sure about in your neck of the woods, we have high rates of opioid deaths. I mean, we have an exceeding amount of opioid related deaths in the county that I work in, which is Milwaukee County, and the state, statewide. So we really are dealing with an epidemic here. So we have, I'm not going to give a number, I'd have to look it up. If I told you, it'd be startling, like 50 deaths a week.
Oh, wow.
Or more. I believe there's more. I want to say 100, but don't quote me on that. I'm going to look before we finish talking. So what my point about that was that because we have an epidemic, it really is taking, the country is taking a look at how we got here. And so it is more pervasive in terms of prescriptions and medical professionals who are prescribing opioids with very little regard to the consequences.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think that's all across the United States.
Yes.
I'm here in Pennsylvania, and it's the same thing. Trying to get a hold of this epidemic with the drugs, and they're finding some of the pharmaceutical companies that produce it. So it's really, I think it's bad all over the country right now.
Yes. So when we talk about, so think about that, to your point about are people using to as a coping strategy or as self-medicating? I think the answer is yes, but then we have this bigger issue of there's limited access to good treatment, whether that's mental health or substance related treatment. So it's just this vicious cycle of people really struggling. So things are challenging right now.
Okay.
Yes. So now that we have this challenge going on, what are some of the strategies that are at least being talked about to get a handle on?
So, interestingly enough, I was just part of a conversation today, and that's talking about how employers can support mental health and substance use disorders. And so I think for the first time that providers like myself and companies and HR, and there was also a pharmacist sitting around the table. We were all having kind of this collaborative conversation about non-traditional ideas for helping people in the workplace. So some of the things that came up were having medication management through the prescription, through the insurance companies and the prescription programs that employers utilize. So for example, and I'm talking very general, but one of the things that was talked about is employers can have programs where the prescription program that they use has limited prescriptions for opioids. So people can only get enough for a couple of days. And, if someone's still in pain due to surgery or something, then they would have that conversation with their physician. But instead of this just automatic 30-day prescription, and oftentimes people can get refills. So really starting to take a look at what it means for people to have prescription management. Yeah. So I think that's, in some part, it was interesting that employers could be part of that conversation, depending on the program that they buy for their employees, the insurance benefit program that they buy.
So how deeply, if you look at different populations, so to speak, people in the workplace, young people in school, where is the opioid epidemic? Does it have its claws in the deepest?
So our young adults, our youngsters, teenagers, and young adults. And what's so concerning about that is because the people that this has their claws in, I like that, are people in their prime. So school, college, young adult, working age. So people are really struggling when they are actually in their prime. And so that's concerning for young adults and for our country and future leaders and everything else that you can think of.
Absolutely so.
Well, the other piece of that is that, so I think for most of us, we have a basic understanding of how detrimental substance abuse disorders can be and how pervasive that can be in all areas of their life and how destructive it can be. So you can imagine how difficult it is to be able to return from such detriment in your life. And so if people are starting younger, it sometimes is even more pervasive, and that they really struggle to come back.
Mm.
Yeah.
By the time they get themselves back on foot, they're past their prime.
Or they've lost a lot of time and a lot of things.
Education, their ability to earn. Let's not even talk about issues of self-esteem that, they need to be able to recover.
Right.
Is at ground zero. Let me ask one other question, but I'm sorry, Ida, go ahead. Your turn.
One thing, in your opinion, are there things that can be like implemented now in terms of a lot of times people don't even realize they are having a mental issue. So I think one of the main things is people being able to realize that they're in that place. So is there anything surrounding that in terms of helping people to, I'm in this place, I need help, and giving them that comfort that it's okay. It is okay to come out and say, I need help with my mental wellness.
So wouldn't that be lovely? I'm just going to wave my magic wand. So, it's interesting what you're getting at, and what you're getting at is stigma, the stigma that's associated with mental health issues. And it's really, really challenging. And again, I go back to that conversation I was having today, where in the workplace, which is where most adults, able-bodied adults are, and they're very hesitant to come forward. So the way our work structure is set up is that we have human resource departments, right? So ideally, if someone's having trouble, that's where they should go, and then they get a referral to an EAP or whatever is in place to support people when they're struggling. Well, most employees are very hesitant because they are worried about backlash, and also how they're perceived, that they can't do their job, that they're not capable. And so that stigma is so pervasive. So I don't have the answer. I wish that we talked about mental health and disorders and addiction, because that is an illness itself. And we often talk about it very punitively, that people could come and talk about having a healthcare issue, just like they talk about having diabetes or a heart condition or cancer. Maybe people don't want to talk about it all the time, but they're not as ashamed to share that information.
Right. So that I think that's where we have to start, is getting rid of the stigma, because we're all a situation away or a trauma away from having a mental breakdown, depending on how deep that trauma or that situation is. And I think that people need to know that it doesn't choose you by any particular status. We're all vulnerable.
Yes.
That's absolutely. I think the piece that I feel like people are starting to resonate with this a little bit, but I think in my experience that people don't understand that we all have mental health, and that it's really about how we take care of it. And we haven't done a very good job in this country of helping people to understand what it means to take care of your mental health. So I don't want to take us too far down a rabbit hole, but with all the social ills, extreme poverty and unemployment and poor housing conditions, all those things impact people's mental health and wellness. So we always want to talk about it as this separate entity, mental health and mental illness, like it's just something that kind of happens, kind of, sort of, nobody understands how or why. But all those things that I just listed the traumas that you mentioned, the situation, those all impact people's mental health. And if we don't take care of it, it's just like anything else. Our health can deteriorate.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things with living, whether your economics are high or low, what we've seen is, some of the famous people are going through the same situation.
Yeah.
The difference is they have the affordability to be able to go and get the help that they need.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same token, they have to realize that they do have a problem.
Mm-hmm. But isn't it interesting what you just said, that it really doesn't, it crosses all socioeconomic, racial, gender barriers. So, yep, many folks who have more resources can access support, but isn't it interesting that they don't always? And it goes back to the stigma. It really does.
Exactly. So if we can begin to dispel that stigma, I think that is really a step in the right direction.
It is. Interestingly, there's research around how to reduce stigma, and I'm part of some groups that are, talking about this and trying to implement.
Mm-hmm.
It is really challenging, and I'm really starting to struggle with how to shift the conversation. I think our youth are getting the hang of it a little bit better than us old fogies. Youth will talk about depression and anxiety and having some challenges. Not all, but in my experience, when I've started to initiate these conversations, kids are like, oh yeah, I'm dealing with that. Oh yeah, I know someone. And they're ready to engage in that real and authentic conversation about what they would like to see different. Mm-hmm. Many adults are still saying, nope, that's not me. I don't have any trouble with my mental health.
While they're acting out all over the place.
Right. I just think that in this country, we don't make space to talk about emotions in a meaningful and authentic way.
Yes, I think so. And I think that's what needs to change. And maybe we need to use our young people to set the example for the rest of us old fogies.
I say that with such kindness.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Part of one of my deepest wishes is that we start, as we teach our young children, and I mean very young children, and there are some school districts across the country that are starting to get it and do it right. They're starting to talk about mental health and social, emotional health and well-being with preschoolers and kindergartners, like starting to integrate that into curriculums at a very early age, which then starts to give children vocabulary to start talking about their emotions and to normalize when you're not well, right?
Yes.
It's so important that we start to normalize when people are having mental health challenges, and that other people can start to recognize it sooner. Absolutely. Before it's too late.
That's an awesome thought. I want to ask you about two other populations very quickly. What about the mental health of older ones, the elderly? How is that going on?
So we are seeing increased suicides amongst older adults, in addition to older adults needing and or seeking mental health treatment. Think about it, the baby boomers, the people are living longer, so we have this extensive population of older adults, more so than we ever have, who are living longer, and they are experiencing different issues in their later age, and so they're in need of mental health treatment. Again, not everyone's going to seek it, and that, I think, that's one of the things that I'm really trying to shift the conversation a little bit. So, like a lot of other health-related issues, if we don't get treatment, we will die.
Mm-hmm.
And mental illness, untreated, can lead to death, meaning suicide. So people who live with severe depression can choose to take their life. So this is not, we don't talk about it in those terms, but if it's untreated, it can kill.
Mm-hmm.
Just like we talk about other things.
That's right. You're so true. So true.
That's
we
really
can
important.
go on and on. I mean, this is a deep conversation. And as you know, we are so passionate about that because we want people to live their best life, whatever that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And the minute you have something going on from the head up, get the help you need. There's many people that have therapists that's had them for years, and they feel good because they're getting the help that they need to keep their mind right, just like exercising your body to keep your body right. And when you start to look at it that way, it makes sense.
Well, everyone is not as enlightened as you, and I think about women and women of color who have been conditioned to think that they're supposed to be strong.
Mm-hmm.
And then men, period, doesn't matter what ethnic group you're part of, they've been conditioned to think that they have to be strong and that they can't show, getting help would be showing weakness. And so, certainly that's not everyone, but that really is a large portion of the population that think that way.
Okay, so that brings me to my other population question. What about mental health in view of the prison system in the United States?
That's something that's so near and dear to me. Here in Milwaukee County, in the city of Milwaukee, not even the county, folks, the city, we have a zip code that incarcerates more men than any other zip code or county in the country. 53206. And our jails are overflowing with African American males, and more than half the population in our jails here in Wisconsin. I dare to say these statistics mirror the country, but here in Wisconsin have mental health issues. So more than half of the people incarcerated have a mental health diagnosis, and they're not getting the treatment that they need for lots of different reasons. And also some of the medications that are helpful, because you can imagine being in a situation like being incarcerated, anxiety levels increase and things like that. And oftentimes, a psychiatrist would prescribe a narcotic, and jails do not dispense narcotics. So oftentimes they don't get the anxiety medication that they need, and that just seems to exacerbate the situation.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yes. Wow.
Deep conversation.
Yes.
And mental health, as you pointed out, both of you mentioned, is a deep topic in this country. And I think sometimes it's glossed over because we have so many glossy, glittery things to look at. We have so much stuff that makes everything look good that nobody sees beneath the water or sees beneath that layer of glitter and stuff, to recognize that people are suffering every day. They wake up suffering, they go to bed suffering, they walk around, go to work, and they're suffering because their mental health is in such poor condition.
Yes.
So it's not just that individual, it's also their families, their co-workers, their neighbors are all affected by this lack of mental health. And it's a growing problem rather than a diminishing problem.
Isn't that interesting? One of the things that there's been some research is looking at social connections. And so, Ruth, when you were talking about this notion of societally we keep obtaining more and more stuff, I think about all the ways that we're disconnected. So when we have more, the more we have, the more disconnected we seem to get.
Yes.
Whether that's for various reasons. I won't even attempt to try to assume what that means.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're learning is that one of the protective factors for improved mental health and wellness is social connections. Mm-hmm. And so if you think about the people that are struggling, oftentimes they're isolated. Now, don't get me wrong, they might still go to work, they might still go to school, mm-hmm. but think about how often people are actually having meaningful interactions. And I dare to say that it's less frequent than maybe the three of us can recall in terms of our school or our early work environments. People were having more meaningful interactions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, today, most people walk around with their cell phone in their hands.
Yes.
And I point, in fact, two young girls that I see every morning. They're both they can't be more than 10 years old, have a cell phone. And they're supposedly together, walking as friends, but their faces are buried in their cell phone.
Yeah.
So that's a big disconnect. Technology has done that.
It has. So as we keep thinking we're improving, we're also creating barriers to authentic connection, which has been shown to be a protective factor for people's mental health and wellness. Mm-hmm. So, perfect example, these are 10-year-olds, right? Who are already creating these patterns of disconnect from each other. Yeah.
Exactly. And they're supposed to be the best of buddies,
Sure.
So there's something else. I'm just going to throw this out there because you're talking about how social connection is so important. One of the movements in this country, in fact, around the world, has been the tiny house movement. Uh-huh. And a lot of places that allow it, they have found that the people that are coming, there are some people who have money who are doing it. But what they found is that these tiny house communities have really been beneficial for people, especially the homeless, or people who have mental health issues, because they have their own separate space, but they're within community. And for the first time, maybe in many, many years, they feel safe. There's a safety factor. So if you know anything about that, I would love to hear your take on it, because it is a growing factor. Many people are downsizing, even people, like I said, who have money and position and wealth and all the rest of that. They're like, I don't want this anymore. I've lived in this community for years, for decades, and I do not know any of my neighbors except to wave at them as they come in and out of their driveway.
I don't think I know any more than you do. I'm hearing I'm hearing something similar. In our community here in Milwaukee, we are creating tiny home communities for the homeless population. So it doesn't surprise me that we're seeing people who are drawn to that for the mere sake of increased connections and increased community, wanting increased community. I think we're kind of coming full circle. It's slow, but we're starting to realize all the progress that has created a wedge from each other. People are starting to reflect on that and realize that that's not real. It's not authentic. Mm-hmm. There's nothing meaningful in the way that we're conducting business. Yeah. So it doesn't surprise me, as to your point.
We're social beings.
Yes.
Social animals.
These conversations like what we're having, and people need to hear it, and they need to hear it often. Because as you well know, adults are no different than children. How many times do you have to tell them something before they finally, I get it. So I think the more we have these type of conversations, letting people know that there is support out there. And letting them know that keeping their mind together is no different than keeping their body. If we can make that connection, and people start to get it, I think that would be, that's where we need to be headed, that conversation.
So, I applaud both of you for having these conversations. And then I encourage people who are listening, there are like, I'm sure people are like, well, that's all nice, but what do I do? And I feel like people can do things in their own little circles. So instead of communicating via Facebook or social media or texting, just even once a week or a couple of times a month, actually coming together. I see it's so interesting. It's those informal gatherings that are usually so wonderful and meaningful is when we all end up at the coffee shop or, and informally, impromptu. And then people feel so enriched, and they feel so like they've, been infused with some energy. It's those kind of connections. I think we try hard there's so much planning, and there's so much, so much planning and scheduling. And sometimes it's just really nice to just kind of informally get together with people that we like.
And let it be. And just let it
be. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I was reading a book or an article, but it was just so profound. And this woman, she had just had a new baby. Her husband was away on business or something, and she was just yearning for the days when all of her friends just dropped by her house and they just, fixed whatever was in the fridge. It may have been any old thing, and they just hung out and chatted. And so she just called everyone and said, "Hey, come on over." She had like a 6-week-old baby. She's like, I threw a sheet over the table, and we just, it was so, life-giving for her. She needed to connect with people, and it didn't need to be fancy schmancy. And I think in this world of everyone portraying to be perfect all the time,
yes.
That people are afraid, they're insecure, and they're afraid to share or be vulnerable.
Right.
So that might be having people over to your home. That might be, letting people in and learning a little bit more about you. And so to that point of connection, it also means being vulnerable. And I don't know if either of you are familiar with Brené Brown. She is a researcher, but she talks about shame and vulnerability. Oh, yeah. I will send you the link to one of her TED Talks. But really, this space of being vulnerable is where real connection happens.
It does. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Oh my! And we don't allow that. We don't allow that. Oh my goodness, we don't.
We sure
don't. Facade. Life is good, and I'm perfect, and I've got all this stuff and all this, that, and the other, and we're so busy keeping up that facade that there's no room for anyone to get in.
Yes.
And at the same time, we're so lonely.
Yeah.
So lonely.
Absolutely.
That's what I get. That people are lonely. Very, very lonely. Very lonely. And they're pretending not to be, because it's not okay to be lonely.
Nope.
It's not okay to admit that.
No, it's not.
If you're lonely, then there is something definitely wrong with you.
Absolutely.
That's a negative, right?
That's a negative.
Like, there's so many things that we judge people as they're not all right if they are human.
Yeah.
If they are human, if they're angry, if they're lonely, if they're sad, if they're whatever, we have all these judgments that come up that say, no, you can't be that. You have to be this way. And it's too much of a burden. It really is too much of a burden nowadays, almost to just be human. It's not permissible.
And
You have to be something else.
I don't think our kids, I think young kids early on are already having to feel the weight of that burden of having to be perfect because social media requires that. So imagine how distressful that is, because no one's perfect.
Right.
And not even understanding how to be vulnerable. So I think about those two little girls you were talking about on the bus stop when there is a train coming by.
That's okay.
That's perfectly okay.
Yeah.
It's part of the conversation.
Wow.
Yeah, can you hear it? I think it's fading now. I was going to say those two little girls that you mentioned, on their phone at the bus stop, the best of friends. that they probably don't even know a lot about each other, right? They or their hopes and their fears and their dreams and their wishes, the things that 10-year-old little girls would normally giggle and whisper about, some of that is lost. And so how concerning and how sad and how distressing is that I have to keep up this facade all the time.
Right. So
and that weighs on us.
Yes. So in this conversation, you have permission to be you, whatever that looks like.
Thank you.
Be you. If you feel like you don't feel like combing your hair today, don't comb your hair today.
Right.
You know, be free. You know, be free, because as humans, we need to understand that that's important for our mental health. That's very important. Like today, we're here. Nobody's all made up. We just here talking about something really important.
Yep.
And I just love it. Well, Martina, before we wrap up, and you know we're going to do this again, because we just love your passion on this, and of course we're passionate about it, and the more we talk about it and the more we, you know, tell people, get the help that you need. Your mental health is just as important as your bodily health. It's all connected. That I think that will help to break the stigma. It's going to be a slow walk, but it's worth it. I believe it's worth it.
I agree. One of the things that we know that does help with decreasing stigma is this notion of peer-to-peer. So in your circles that you are in, whether it's in your faith-based circles, whether it's in your employment, talking to people about this is really helpful if they understand that someone just like them. So I'm a middle-aged woman. I can talk to kids about mental health and wellness, but it's not as effective in decreasing stigma as one of their peers. Same as a middle-aged male or people of color to other people of color. It's not that we can't share information, but research shows in terms of shifting perspectives, it's really important that it is someone that looks and sounds that people can relate to, the person can relate to.
Absolutely. So if people want to get in contact with you, how do they do so?
Yes. So Mental Health America of Wisconsin, I am available either just giving me a call, 414-336-7963, but please visit our website at www.mhawisconsin.org.
Okay, so we are definitely going to have you back. You already know this is our second time with Martina, and it's always been an interesting conversation, full of knowledge, full of what you can do today, because I think that's really important for people to know, what can I begin to do to help myself, to get my head, my mental state where it needs to be, you know, so that I can really live the life that I should be living, despite it all.
Well, I encourage anyone who is not sure that they can take a screening. So the website that I gave, mhawisconsin.org, it's a national, it's linked to screening tools. So anyone who's listening thinking, you know, I've been wondering, they can just take a 5-minute or less screening that just asks a few questions. And then it'll direct them to some local resources. The other thing, I just want to make sure that we give people a couple of tools. If they're really kind of concerned or have some questions, that their primary care physician is a great resource. They don't necessarily have to go see a psychiatrist. Their primary care physician would be able to talk them through and hear about what their concerns are. And antidepressants or anxiety medication can easily be prescribed through their primary care physician.
Okay. All right. We thank you, Martina, and we love you. And we will definitely have this conversation again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Much love.
Much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you to the amazing women of a Sister Circle Empowerment Network, ASCEN LLC, and our media partners. Let Just Minding My Business Media promote your business. For information, visit us at jmmb.asistercircle.org. That's jmmb.asistaccircle.org. Voiceovers by RCH VoiceWorks. For when you want to be heard. Call 443-620-4115.
Thank you for tuning in to Just Minding My Business Radio. I'm your host, Ida Crawford.
And I'm your co-host, Ruth Haskins.
We hope you enjoyed the show and appreciate you stopping by. Many blessings to you and yours.